Morning. All right, we are a
Hey,
couple minutes
hey.
past. Thanks for hanging in there. Want to give people a few minutes to jump from one call to the other. If you're anything like those of us on the phone, especially Brent and Chase, we're back to back around here. So we will go ahead and get started. Just a few housekeeping items. Hopefully everybody is very comfortable with all the features in Zoom by now. But Q&A, chat section, those are all there. We want this to be very interactive. So as you have questions, I know Chase and Brent like to keep things very lively. So please feel free to use those throughout the call. So let's go ahead and get into intros here. We've got Chase, as I mentioned, a little bit about Chase. So employee number 2 with Venn Technology back in the day. He's the guy in charge when our founder Scott isn't around, and probably already to some extent, even when he is. So Chase and his team have built an award-winning integration practice that focuses on connecting Sage Intacct to other platforms through custom-built integrations. We've connected it to hundreds of different apps with more than 6 years of integration experience around in and around Sage Intacct. He claims that there's really no part of the API that him and his team have yet to touch. So lots of experience there. And then Brent, he came to Venn over 2 years ago with an extensive background in nonprofit ministry and marketing. He's now in more of a sales position, leading our director of business growth is his current title. So he has a personal interest in technology automation, as is evident by the number of automations he has set up in and around his home, and more recently outside. He's got very groovy outdoor space with lights and things that come on with the music. So he's definitely got that personal interest, and since joining Venn has been very huge in growing out our reach with our clients and our prospects. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you, Chase and Brent.
Awesome. Thanks, Mel. Well, before I jump off the slide, typically Chase and I are on some calls together. We're not on some calls together. And I've missed some of the banter between our, Aggie Longhorn kind of vibe here. Anything you want to say from this past weekend before we jump into it? Or just stay on mute? That's probably good. Yeah. Just duck out of the frame. All right, guys, let's get going. So as Mel said, we do a lot of great fun integrations here. Chase has a ton of experience with Intacct and integrating in that system. So what we want to do is give a brief overview of integrations at a high level, because there are different types. And then we want to get to the meat and potatoes of this and talk about Shopify and Intacct and how we have a standard integration there, but also we can expand upon that for different needs, which we got several of those out in the wild, right? So integrations at a high level here, what does it really mean to integrate and why is it important? So if you think about your different systems when they're separated and you're doing this whole, like, I'm going to type in this system and I'm going to do the swivel chair approach and I'm going to go over here and type in the system, there's a lot of area for misinformation to come in, a lot of errors that could be put into your system. We like to call it fat fingering over here, where you just mistype a number or mistype something. And your whole data gets off, right? So if you think about what that would do to your business, just a 1% error rate in how that scales over time, and the hours you may lose, the dollars you may lose, it's really hard to run a business when you have that level of error proneness coming through here. So integrations help solve that, where whatever you're doing over here just gets picked up and moved over to the system logically. And that's what we build. That way there's no human element needed unless you really want. We can have some approval processes built in there for sure. But the name of the game is automation, right? Let's remove that human element so that we can just push that data across, right? So in the integration space, this isn't all there is, but these are some of the ones that people are most familiar with. I want to talk about real briefly. So with integrations, we've got 4 different types we're going to talk through. So packaged integrations, if you're in the Salesforce world, you're in the HubSpot world, they have marketplaces where you can download an app, a pre-packaged solution that you're just connecting those systems and doing very light configuration, but they install a package to facilitate that integration. It's really nice. In the Intacct space, you might know about the advanced CRM. That's a packaged solution. So those are really great. We don't want to reinvent the wheel, but they are out of the box. They only do what they do and nothing else. And The opposite direction, you've got custom code. This is more of a traditional methodology where you have an internal team, a lot of times, that are building out integrations on internal servers or hosted in AWS, and they're writing code tens of thousands of lines to do the same thing that we may do in a different type of solution. This is really hard because it's not scalable. It's very hard to maintain over time. And ultimately, with all that, it's very, very costly. So we have a different approach that achieves the same functionality, but custom code is still very much used out there in the wild today. RPA, or robotics process automation, is relatively new, but this is training a robot to do a lot of the manual clicks you may do on a machine. So you're training it to walk a process, do the same thing over and over without having to do integrations itself. It's just performing those functions you would manually do in the UI. The last one is where we like to camp out in middleware. So it's a no-code, low-code approach to doing integrations at the end of the day. Similar to custom code, where it gives us a lot of functionality and a lot of freedom in how we push and pull that data, but it's more declarative instead of actually writing code. We can write if we need to, but we try not to because it's not scalable. As turnover happens, it's easier to maintain and pick up where someone else left off, right? So diving a little more into middleware, some of the things with advantages and disadvantages of not having it. Without it, I touched on this, it can be costly to maintain. It's very difficult to scale over time. There can be vulnerability and security threats. We all know, we've probably gotten emails as of late of different systems and applications we subscribe to, and they've been hacked to some degree. When you have data living on servers locally or even in the cloud, that can be a very vulnerable solution, right? So middleware helps in that regard. With it, you get some of that secure connection. It is all in cloud. Well, you can do some on-prem stuff, but most of it is all in cloud. You have unlimited data sync. It's very flexible. And then another thing that we have within it is built-in error monitoring. So when we have, not everything's perfect, right? You're going to input something that doesn't meet the logic we build. And when that takes place, we want to notify you immediately that there was an error in your integration via email, Slack, Teams, whatever your kind of cup of tea is. That's all built in there. You don't have to go build that on your own, which would be more custom coding, right? All right, so before we move on, let's pause real quick. And Mel, if you don't mind throwing up a poll, let's talk about which of the following is you or your customers. We have prospects, customers, and partners all on the phone. Biggest pain point today. So subscription billing, payment processing, syncing transactional data across, inventory is always a big one. Obviously the catch-all, if there's something we haven't touched on, definitely dump it into the comments and we'll touch on that here, but other. And then if you are a unicorn and you fall into F, we definitely want to talk with you. If everything's smooth sailing, one, you probably hopped on this webinar just to come talk to us because you do this right and we want to learn from you. But yeah, we definitely want to know if you are smooth sailing. All right, I probably chatted enough there to let people answer. Mel, do we have any answers to that poll?
Yes. C, syncing transactional data.
Syncing transactional data. It's pretty basic, right? You've got master data and transactional, you got customers and information there, but it's that transactional piece of those orders coming across that swivel chair methodology, right? So very, very common. All right, so moving on, let's get into, as I said earlier, the meat and potatoes of this. What's possible with integration, specifically Shopify and Intacct? So I want to bring up a diagram here. This is the nice, pretty marketing diagram that Mel put together. The basic idea is these systems have really good APIs and we can touch almost every area of what they have to offer. So we've taken that and we've built a standard solution that meets most people's needs, 95+%. But as I know with several partners and customers on the phone, we also have more customized solutions that meet their needs beyond what we talked about here. So at the base level, what we're going to show today, we're going to have transactions happening in Shopify. We'll have customers coming into an online store, putting products inside of their cart, and then purchasing, getting that payment up front. We'll take all of that and pick it up and move it into Intacct, creating the customer, creating the AR payment associated with the invoice for that particular order that came through. And then we also have inventory management Doesn't matter whether you're managing that in Intacct or Shopify, we let the other system know what's going on. And there's other inventory systems that you may be using outside of these two that give you a little more robustness, right? These systems will talk to each other. That external inventory system can talk to either Shopify or Intacct or both. So they all play really nicely. All right, next slide I'm going to throw up is just this expanded a little further in more detail. We do this to kind of show the breadth of what this integration looks like, not to really scare people, but it does give a little more clarity into what I just said, where we have customers that go over to Intacct, orders and line items that move over to invoices inside of Intacct, and then those payment details coming over as AR payment associated with that invoice. So it's very much a lift and a shift. And we have inventory down at the bottom where we're syncing between warehouses, associating those items, and then you've got PO process attached to that for reorders and so forth. So this is what Chase is going to show today, those orders getting placed in Shopify and moving over to Intacct and seeing that inventory reduction as those items are taken off the shelf, right? All right, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chase now. I'll stop sharing my screen and let him take over the show.
Let's do it. So guys, if you haven't been in Intacct before, I've got it on the screen. I see some people that probably have Intacct or have used it before. I see some folks that I know are about to use Shopify. Welcome to the call, guys. I'm going to walk you through this from start to finish as if we haven't really set up anything before. Maybe that's not totally true, but what I am going to do is I'm going to go in and create a new item. So in this demo box, I've got everything under the sun enabled to be able to show you whatever you guys might ask for. In this case, I'm going to go into the order entry module and I'm going to go ahead and add an item. Now, this is what you'd normally do. This is standard functionality. So there's nothing special here. I'm going to do a barbecue brush. So I'm going to do BBQB, BBQ brush. We're into barbecuing down here in Texas, and I'm not very good at it. I mean, my stuff tastes good, but I think Brent has the Traeger, which is a little bit better than what I've got. So anyway, it seems to be the case.
As long as you don't call grilling hamburgers and hot dogs barbecue. Then
oh, that's what you do that, right? I do the
no. Low and slow is barbecuing.
Anyway, this barbecue brush is really expensive. It's $45. I could, if I wanted to, make it taxable. I'm gonna keep it tax free from now. If you do make it taxable, it makes it taxable in Shopify, right? Which then Shopify will add a tax line. I'm gonna skip that. I'm gonna make this inventory item, so I'm gonna add this to the main warehouse. And that, I mean, you might do more here in terms of setting it up in Intacct, but for our purposes, we're gonna leave it like that. I'm gonna hop over to our Shopify tab. And these are kind of what we call our audit fields, where we keep track of a variety of different things. I can manually sync this if I want to, and we can program it to automatically sync every time you create an item, kind of up to what your needs are. But I do need to come in and set the variant name. So this is barbecue brush, and this is BBQB. Now these are separate from the Intacct item ID because you might want to show in Shopify something to the customer with a different name and a different SKU than what you might have in Intacct. They can be the same, it's totally fine. All right, so that's all I need. I'm gonna go ahead and save this. And what that is going to do is it's gonna send a smart event. If you don't know what a smart event is, it's much like a webhook. If we catch it, we might see it coming through this queue here. So we've got some people, Bradley is working on something. This is a queue of all the smart events, all the webhooks that are waiting to be sent out. Right, so it's near instantaneous. That was close enough. I mean, a few seconds. Right, so what I'm going to do now is hop over into Shopify. I want to check to make sure my product came over. So I'm going to just type my SKU in. Let's see if it made it. BBQ brush. Here's my T-shirt in the middle of syncing. Let's give it a second. I did test this just before hopping on the phone, so I know that it works. Ah, there we go. Perfect. All right, so here's my brush, right? In Shopify, you have a product and a product variant. And if you only have one variant, right, I only have one brush, then I have a variant and a product. You always have a variant with a product. It's kind of confusing if you know anything about the architecture of Shopify, but I've got this variant here for my product. In my product page, we're not necessarily gonna pull over, media files or full on descriptions. We're not gonna make it look pretty, right? This is about data and the integration. We're gonna move the data back and forth. But I have a problem. I can't sell anything because I don't have a quantity. So we do have an inventory add-on in this, in what we've built out, that if you want to, you can sync your inventory from Intacct over to Shopify. We can do it vice versa. It's just sold separately because not everybody has the inventory module in Intacct. If you don't, you could just come in and type, whatever quantity you want. There's some other quantity inventory functionality inside of Shopify, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this at 0, and I'm actually going to hop over back into Intacct. If you have the inventory module, then you'd have something like this, and you've got transactions where you can move inventory in and out. You can write off inventory. You can do all the accounting things that you might do with inventory. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring in some inventory here for my brush. Set that to USD, BBQB, right? Warehouse is main. I'm going to set this to 65. Unit is each. I don't have my costs enabled here. So there's more you could do, right? But I just want to get the inventory amount over into Shopify. So my inventory receipt is going to increase the quantity on hand, which then will give me quantity to sell inside of Shopify. So that's going to run through the same job queue here. Let's go check that out. Smart events. Okay, it's already gone. So if it's not there, then it already went through. Let's go back over in Shopify, reload this, and we should see 65. There we go. So we're ready to roll. We've got inventory to sell. Intacct knows of our inventory, right? So to Shopify. So when we go into the store, now somebody could buy it. Now our store is pretty weak. We're not in. Mel is really good at making this stuff look good. I am not. So my store looks pretty basic. It's the default theme. But what I want to do here is to demonstrate creating an order. So your site's going to look different, right? It's going to look way better than mine, but they're going to have sort of the same kind of functionality if you take all the bells and whistles of the theme out. So there's my brush, 45 bucks. Maybe I'll add in 3, right? And I'm just going to buy it now. Wait for it to load.
One for each of us for the barbecue competition we're going to have after this call.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't want to go up against your husband, Tanner, because I know I think Britt and I would both lose relatively quickly. Not even a question.
Been a while.
And let's put in Chase, Friedman, put in a random address, continue shipping. So this piece is easy, right, for the customer, but there's a lot of things going on. You've got shipping, you've got discounts, you've got coupons, you've got like individual line item discounts, you've got whole order coupons. There's a variety of things you can do here to manipulate the order even before they pay any money. So whether you do that manually or after they've paid, right, we take care, or we bring in all of that data, and we'll bring them in as subtotals. So your tax lines, your shipping, your discounts, or your coupons, if you want those to be subtotals, we can do that, or they can be line items. It's really kind of dependent on how you're going to set up Intacct or how you have already set it up. All right, so let's go ahead and make a payment here. Oh, wait, let me go back. Let's ship this. Ship the standard. So I can get my 690 to show up. I'm just going to put 1 here. That's how Shopify wants us to do these test transactions. Security code, and we're ready to roll. So I'm going to pay this. Now, going back into Intacct, Shopify just uses webhooks. So we're monitoring for those webhooks. We're going to pick that up. What this is going to do is actually a little more complicated. It's going to go and check to make sure a customer exists, because we can't create an invoice or anything else without the customer. So we're going to upsert the customer, create it or update it. with the latest info that they just gave us, right? I think we have all of this mapped, but we can map basically any field that Shopify has, or if you want to use custom fields, then we can use those as well. We can map those over. Essentially, there's no limit on the number of fields that we map over. Obviously, the phone number, right? Any kind of email address, anything like that. So let's see what happened. Let's go pop over here into Intacct. I'm going to go into the order entry module. I'm going to open up my invoices. I've got a ton of transaction definitions. You probably won't have this many. We can work with any transaction definition. So actually, here it is. It came in, right? And I've got my my transaction here. It is closed. Go ahead and take a look at this guy. Make sure it looks good. So I've got my 3 brushes. I had 62 on hand, right? We're down 3, or we're down 3 to 62. Price $45, right? Without tax or anything else, it's $135. Now in the shipping subtotals, right? I have $6.90, and that increases it right to the right amount. So that's all well and good, but now we also need to bring in the AR payment. So if we go over to payment details, we'll see that the amount's due, the payment's been made, because it is, sometimes you might have an order without a payment, or maybe you take a deposit, like $50 deposit, and you're going to fulfill it later. All those things are something that we are aware of and that the integration can handle depending on how you guys have things set up. On our Shopify tab, we keep track of everything we can, or at least everything that will help us identify if anything went wrong. Our Shopify order ID, our transaction ID, we know that it's synced. And I think we have, let me check this guy. Do we have an ID on this one as well? No, it might be in the back. Might not be able to see it in the particular view. Anyway, but now our customer is in here, right? So Chase was created, put in his customer ID. Let's see, we did map address, like I said, can map over however you want to set up the phone numbers, right? Yeah, so that's the integration in a nutshell. We've got we've got a ton of people actually using this, and there's often a question of how many transactions can it handle. We've yet to hit a limit, at least in terms of moving one transaction between one record or one item or one product variant. Typically, we're going to run into is Intacct asking for maybe some more money because we're moving too much data. And if you have that problem, that's a good thing. Anyway, guys, hopefully the demo was what you were looking for. If not, give us a ring. But I'm going to hand it back over to Brent. Back to you, sir.
Cool. All right, so let's wrap this thing up. So let me share my screen one more time. We'll go slideshow with it. All right, so questions. I guess I'll turn it back over to you, Mel, to facilitate this time, and we'll just be the ones answering the questions.
Right on. Gotta love when a live demo goes smoothly. Good job on that one, Chase. So not that doesn't happen often. It's just always fun, always a good experience. So how long does it take to implement one of these things, guys? So let's talk about just kind of the standard piece.
Yeah, standard version, assuming no complexities, it's going to be about 4 or 5 weeks front to back. That includes more detailed discovery on the front end, as well as some testing on the back end, right? If you meet the mold, it should be relatively quick. If things come up during that process, or you're not an actual standard integration, obviously you can go further, but ideally we're looking at 4 to 5 weeks.
Cool. All right, this is an interesting one. Can the integration manage pre-orders or products that are not yet in inventory?
That's a great question. We've come across that a few times. So Chase touched on that a little bit with the not getting payment up front. But why don't you take that one, Chase?
Yeah, this is a good question because it's kind of dependent on how you set up or how you want Shopify set up. It is possible to take pre-orders. And effectively, what I've seen done with our clients is they would have a non-inventory item where they would bring over those orders and then, work accounting magic to move those over to inventory items. Really, any way that you set it up, we can handle it. We just need to know in advance, right, to make sure that the integration can handle it. You might have a plugin in Shopify that does some wonkiness that we need to kind of dive into. But there's no reason why we wouldn't be able to do that because we have done it before. It's just kind of dependent on how you have it set up. So if that is something you do, do some front end research on your own to, have any documentation that we can look at when we talk on the phone.
All right. How has the integration changed with Shopify's B2B solution rollout?
Chase, you want to take that one too? Well, I mean, we know, Shopify can be used for B2C. That's its more traditional version, right? But we've got Shopify moving into that B2B space. And one of the biggest things with that is the bill later function, right? So you're taking an order in from the beginning, but invoicing at a later effect. So from our perspective, when it comes to integrations, we're relatively agnostic to the systems. We just, as long as we get access to that data, we can push it over somewhere else. So how's it affected the integration? It really hasn't, because the biggest thing in B2B is you're not getting payment right up front. You're allowing them to purchase. We take that order, we pick it up, move it over. We can actually do it as an order or an invoice inside of Intacct. And then you go from there to bill it out to the customer. Now, once payment comes in, we can go the other direction. So the payment gets sent back to Shopify. So you're not sitting there with open orders inside of Shopify too. So we close that loop. But that's really the biggest change. And from our perspective, it's not even that much of a change because we were already handling that from a B2C version, because there are customers that will place an order and get invoiced on the backside too.
Yeah, the biggest, I'll add to that. The biggest challenge is that Shopify, if you have the storefront or the kiosk, right? If you have a place where you can take orders in at the desk, Shopify gives you the ability to edit the order. And if you know anything about accounting, there's not many accountants that would jump up and down if you told them that you're going to edit an order in a previously closed period. And so there's a lot of I won't call it animosity. It's just like, hey, we need to conform to best practices. And if we can't conform to best practices, then we need to find a way, right, that makes sense for everybody involved. So if you do edit orders, we need to have a discussion about that up front, make sure everybody's on the same page, because, and in addition to that, Intacct has restrictions on what you can do with records that have already been paid. I can't edit a sales invoice that has already been paid like you can inside of Shopify. So Shopify even has some documentation on this, that this is kind of not what accountants would like. Anyway, but if you do it, just be thinking about, maybe is there a different way we can modify it? Maybe we can create a different order. Just what's the process that your business, how are you going to handle that from a business standpoint? Because you have two systems where it is possible in one, but it's not possible in the other. So if you didn't have an integration, how would you do it manually? So think about that on the front end, because that's something we're going to ask you guys. So if you know about it up front and how you're going to handle it or how you want to handle it, then it just makes everything else, that much smoother.
Yeah, just kind of goes back to the whole, you can have all the technology, but until you have kind of that process, the alignment between your process, people, and technology, it can be tricky. So we are 2 minutes over the time we've allotted for this webinar. So I just want to thank everyone for joining us. Hopefully you learned something today. Thank you for the questions. If you're interested in learning more about integrating Shopify and Sage Intacct or any other app with Sage Intacct, we integrate Sage Intacct to anything with an API. We would love to hop on a call with you, discuss your requirements in more detail. And as you can see from the nature of this call and these questions, yes, we can absolutely demo the system, but we love to dive into your process and learn more about what are you trying to go do. That's how we operate. So please reach out. And I hope you learned something from this today. And thanks again for joining us. Hope you have a great rest of the week.
Awesome.
Peace.
Thanks, guys.
Peace, y'all.
Have a good one.